It's the 15th day of March, 2015, and this is The Radical Agnostic. Broadcasting from the dusty frontier, that is Tucson, Arizona. Another beautiful winter day. My name is John. My co-host Mark couldn't be here today, but he should be back next week. And back by popular demand, Bryan Richter from Episode 1 fame. How are you?
Good. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. And our guest, I'm honored to present Martin Escobar. He is a second-degree black belt, owner, and head instructor of De Brazil Jiu-Jitsu Academy right here in Tucson. He's also a police officer with the Tucson Police Department. Martin, sincere thanks for coming today, and how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. You're going to kind of lend an air of credibility to this fly-by-night operation. So.
Yes, especially considering last week's guest.
I don't know about that. Can we talk about trapping?
For the pro-trapping argument, we have Martin Escobar. I want to cover a lot of things today. I want to talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All three of us, I can safely say it's our passion. I want to talk about what it's like to be a police officer. We might get into police brutality against police, which is another side of that issue that people don't often take into account, and a bunch of other things. We'll see how much time we have. But the first thing I wanted to talk about actually is your philosophy on parenting and family, because I mean, I love my sister and we keep in touch and everything, but our relationship, especially at the age that your kids are now, our relationship wasn't that tight. And I'm wondering how you achieved such a close bond between your son and your daughter. And was that intentional? Was it a nature versus nurture thing? Or how do you think that came about? Because they're such good friends. They love each other. They treat each other with respect. I mean, they mess around and they make fun of each other and stuff. But at the end of the day, they're really tight. And like, it was Levi's birthday recently, and your daughter Miranda posted like a really touching thing on Facebook that just brought all this back into my mind. So I was wondering what you can contribute to that for other parents out there or future parents.
I'm not going to take all the credit. My wife and I are, as a Barbara, that is, and I think we brought our kids up like any parent would want to bring up their kids, with a lot of respect. Make sure that they acknowledge that each other, and they understood each other, they respected each other, and I think they've grown very, very close together. And I think it also has to do a big part with the way Miranda looks at Levi and her demeanor and her temperament, you would say. She's very easygoing. She's not competitive, or at least never shown it with her brother. And she adores her brother and looks at him, like a hero in a sense. And I think that combination of what you have there, it's been a good relationship with them growing up. I seriously cannot remember, and now that you bring it up, is where they actually fought with each other or anything like that.
Which is completely abnormal. I mean, that is very rare.
Yeah. To
have siblings that close.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought we might bring that up. I mean,
Well, I was really tight with my brother for a long time. I remember somebody telling my mom once that I love seeing your boys because where I see one, I see the other, and my boys just don't get along like that.
When you lived in Germany and Pennsylvania, you guys,
inseparable.
Told me,
inseparable. And then we just drifted apart as certain behaviors developed, and
I'm wondering if, of course, as the children of a badass black belt in jiu-jitsu, your kids both train, and I wonder if that was part of their...
I think that has something to do with it also, that they've been brought up in the same arena, you could say, where they actually had to go out there and compete on their own on the mat, and for them to have each other to cheer each other on, and I think that goes a long way. A lot of you have different kids that find different interests in anything, but in our family, it's always, ever since I started doing jiu-jitsu, that's played a big focus in our lives. I mean, it was something started just to get me in shape for my job, and it developed into, like you said, it's a passion. It's what we do. It's part of my life and my kids' lives too.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been through the sort of the gauntlet of competition, of jiu-jitsu competition. They've been through that, where most adults have never put themselves in such a dangerous and just scary situation, and they've been doing it since they were almost literally babies.
Yeah, they've been on the mats since, like I said, since they were babies. They've been rolling around. They've been. I used to play with them, toss them around, and once they started, the school got into an organized atmosphere, then they joined the program.
Yeah, they sure did. I remember like a microcosm of that, seeing them. Like one of my favorite jiu-jitsu moments, actually, Miranda had stepped up to fight that big green belt girl. She was huge.
Oh yeah.
And she was huge, and she was losing that first match on points, and there was about a minute left, and Levi had been pretty quiet the whole time, and then he started yelling at her at the end, like giving her direction and telling her what to do, and I watched her respond to his voice, to him, and like get so much energy from that, and reverse that girl and beat her.
Yeah, and won that match. I remember that.
And then beat her again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but he was much more vocal the second match, and she dominated the whole thing the second match.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing her get that energy, and I'm like, man, she loves that guy. Like, there's a lot of love between those two, because his voice really, she was going to lose that match, and him yelling at her pulled her out of it. Like, she did it for him.
Yeah, and honestly, I think she does a lot of stuff like that, where she really tries to impress her big brother. I mean, it is her big brother, and she looks up to him, and it's like, she will fight hard. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Was she 16 yet?
She's not 16. She will be 16 in September.
And just that alone, I mean, the quality of her jiu-jitsu game, we're going to talk about that probably right now, but the people out there can kind of get a grasp on what jiu-jitsu is, but how hard it is and how incredible it is for a 15-year-old girl, and she's to train as she does with the adults. And she's been doing that for a couple of years, actually.
Yeah, I think she's on her third year already. And
it's not like it's not like it's just a novelty. She gets in there and taps people out on occasion. I've seen it happen.
That's the thing with jiu-jitsu, that you can take someone as young as Miranda, and it's like I tell when the adults first start off, like, hey, don't take it easy on her, because she knows her game.
Yeah.
and they're surprised when she puts that shoulder in the face, but yeah, it's funny because with her, she stepped out when she started. She first stepped out, and she got into her, I guess, girly stage, and didn't want to do it, and I didn't push her, and she stepped out for about a year, and one day I said, hey, you want to go to class and see if you want to go? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, I guess so. And she went in there, and I think she was 7 when she stopped. Brought her in when she was 6 or so, and stopped the whole year. When she was 8, she went back to class, and I remember her coming along, and she joined the kids class. I remember her getting her first tap on some little dude, and she's never stopped since then. I mean,
I watch her tap grown men.
Yeah, and what's funny is that they don't understand it, and it's like, and it's a technique. I mean, she puts her time in. She works hard.
Yeah. And not to mention Levi. I mean, he's 19 now, right?
Yeah, he just turned 19.
And he's just, I mean, Bryan said it like a year ago. He said, like, get it while you can or whatever. Cause,
he's coming.
He's coming. And he's there. I mean, as far as blue belts and purple belts,
I'm so glad when he got his purple belt.
Yeah.
Well, you feel a little better about it.
For those
point. Like, when he's all over you, you're like, all right, well, he's at least a purple belt. He's not a blue belt.
Yeah. Yeah. And for background, Bryan and I train under Martin at De Brazil, and he promoted us all the way from white belt up to brown belt, which is where we're sitting right now. But I mean, geez, Levi, he'll probably be wearing
He
a
was
black belt before he's drinking alcohol.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he's starting to get to that point. I mean, there's still development and where he needs to grow in his game, and that's why I haven't promoted him as.
And he likes his wrestling too. It almost comes naturally to him. He likes to employ that fast, athletic, powerful game.
Well, he's young. He's young, so that stamina's there, and it just kicks in, and he doesn't gas out. And I think that's what makes it harder for some of us older guys in classes. Well, our tank starts getting half full, and his is still going.
We just try to hold him down, slow him down.
At about that 3-minute mark, you're like, oh, he's really in great shape. Like, I need some better grips for a second here.
I was thinking about this conversation, and might be a stupid question, but was Miranda named after the Miranda rights that you give to?
No.
Okay.
I think my wife Barbara picked that up from it was a movie, and I can't remember which movie, but she always liked the name Miranda, if you pronounce it that way.
Miranda.
But and we liked it, and she chose that name, Miranda, and I would have to ask her where it came from or what movie, but I remember her pointing that out. As far as her name came from.
I thought it would be funny if that was like a cop thing.
No.
That's a decent question, though. I never thought of that.
Yeah. If Levi's name was Nightstick or...
Yeah.
Okay, that was terrible. Well, let's talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu so that people can put that previous conversation in context, because a lot of people listening, I'd say most people fall into one of two misconceptions about the game. I'd say half the people think it's like some silly kind of like Eastern Tai Chi kind of like wax on, wax off type of thing that doesn't really work. And then the other half of people think it's UFC. In other words, they think it's like brutal, like meathead muscle guys that come in there and they're screaming and just kicking each other's ass.
Karate chopping the air as soon as and
it's fine. People don't have the context to understand what it is, but if you're explaining it to someone with no idea, what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how is it different from what people usually think of as the martial arts like karate or whatever? Because you did karate, or was it taekwondo?
I did Kaju Kimbo. I actually practiced that before, and actually the only reason because when I started it, I had seen the initial shows, the initial UFC shows, where Royce Gracie, fought in a tournament style competition, and I mean that's tough when you got 3 or 4 competitors one day. You got one match,
and they can punch you,
and they can punch you, and he was usually the lightest one,
bare knuckles too.
Yeah, exactly, and so that really impressed me as far as what I saw from there. And I mean, to see a smaller person defeat a bigger person, then I started to look into it. And
it's a fighting system. It's grappling, and so it's kind of like wrestling in a way.
Yeah, it's a grappling. I mean, I guess wrestling, judo, sambo, and all those, they fall into the grappling arts, and which is, I guess, the general term would be a wrestling term,
right? The way I've always tried to define it, well, one thing I think about jiu-jitsu is that the genius of it is that you can train at basically 100%, because what it is, it's a submission grappling art. So it's the manipulation of joints like the elbows and the knees and the wrist and
I can't believe you are leaving out ankles.
The ankles fall. All the large joints are fair game, and there's also a lot of chokes and stuff like that. And so when you're rolling, is what we call it, you might have someone in an arm bar where you're straightening the arm to the point where it would break, and your opponent though can tap out, and then it's over. You guys shake hands. The match is over, and you start over again. So the genius of it is that you can go 100% right up until the moment where a catastrophic injury occurs, and then the guy can tap out and stop. Other arts like boxing or Muay Thai even, I mean, some people do this, but sparring 100% is just, it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
You don't want to, you can't be punching.
You're going to have a short career.
You're going to have a short career. You're going to have concussions, broken face, broken bones. So they have to go, 50, 60%. And so they don't actually get to exercise their art at 100%. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, I can try as hard as I can to choke Bryan out. And he's not going to get injured until the point where he's going unconscious if I held on to it, which I never would. He taps, I let go. So to me, the genius of it is, you can go as hard as you can every match, every class in jiu-jitsu.
But with you saying that, it's like, you can go as hard, but it's not grinding. I think it was Ed Carrasco, one of my black belts, that we sat there and talked about it, and it says, with wrestling, it's a grinding. You have to go, 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 go.
Right.
With jiu-jitsu, the more time you spend on it, the more fluid you become.
You find the flow.
And you find a flow. And so it's not a grinding where you're hurting each other all the time.
That's a good
point.
point.
You could pretty much play from your back and somebody in between your legs in full guard and defend from there without you getting pounded in.
And attack from there.
And attack from there. And the same thing as you defend from that position.
That's a good point. That it was a bad way to put it, to say that you go 100%, and that's not.
But you could, and like I said, but you could still go 100%, and you're still flowing because you're not really exerting a lot of power, a lot of strength in these techniques.
And that's the ultimate goal in the brown belt, black belt, and beyond level, right? Is finding a way to execute these techniques that you've mastered, but with less and less strength.
Exactly, and that's actually what it becomes, because it's time. Think about the many times you've done an armbar, the times you've done a sweep, and all these years you put in. Those moves just become easier. You don't even think about it.
Right.
I think as you get further in, for me, the philosophy has become more ingrained, like the intrinsic understanding of movement and leverage and position, where you realize these things without having to be told over and over. Like, I don't have to move him; I can move me.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just things like that.
Yeah, instead of trying to take this bigger guy, perhaps, and just flip him over, manipulate his body.
Yeah,
that's like Fernando. That's why he doesn't like rolling. He says with white belts, because
because
they're grinding. Yeah, it's not the flow, and it's not that it give them a harder time, but they're just constantly, they're not flowing as a higher belt. You're both flowing, so you're trying to catch each other, and it's a more challenging match, but you're not having to fight brute strength the whole time through.
And like with so many things, though, you get... When you're first starting out, it's impossible to follow the advice that the experienced guys, the black belts, give you. In other words, the advice that Fernando would give the white belt is stop spazzing out. That's actually something he said to me several times. Stop spazzing out. Stop just trying so hard to accomplish this technique. But the white belt hears that and they say, what do you mean stop trying? Like, that's all I can do.
I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's all I can do. So, and it's crazy. It's advice that you can get. It's wisdom, and it's completely true, but it does you almost no good.
No good, yeah.
You just got to keep it in the back of your head,
and
then access that wisdom one day when you're a purple belt or blue belt, and you realize, oh, this is what they meant by flowing or taking it easy. But so, jiu-jitsu. What else? There's some competition. That's such a big part of this. Most legitimate jiu-jitsu academies encourage competition, and so we're talking about. These things are held at like colleges and high school auditoriums, and it's a few hundred guys often, and women and kids in a tournament, and it's like nothing else. You step out there, all the training, the whole time you train, you have your team. The whole time driving up there, maybe you have your team or your family or whatever. And then at the tournament, you sit in the bleachers with your team, and you get ready, and everyone's nervous as hell, man. And we all deal with it in different ways, But then you step on that mat for that competition, and you're alone, and you realize it. And it's like your guys are there standing and watching you and giving you, your coach is giving you advice. But, man, you step out there, and it's just like you hear like an eagle scream in the distance, and that's it. It's like you're on a frozen tundra in the wilderness, and it's just you versus another person, another guy.
Your opponent,
and it is like nothing else. I mean, the nerves is a big thing.
Everybody goes through it. I remember when I first started competing, as a white belt and as a blue belt, my forearms, because, I learned that now. Like, they very rarely get tightened up now, unless I'm really, really tired or exhausted that day and have to hold on a little bit longer. But when you first start competing, the first thing you've seen the guys when they said, my arm, I can't move my forearms, I can't move my hands.
Yeah, they don't even want to work.
Yeah, it's because you tightened up so much. And as you gain experience and let's say you start competing a little bit more, then that eventually goes away. Then you start understanding, you talk about the wisdom that comes about don't spaz out. Well, it's the same thing. Don't hold on with all the muscles in your arm. Yeah. Your fingers are very strong, and so you tend to grip more with your fingers than anything else as time goes on. And so you're not exerting all that strength from your forearms and biceps and everything else.
And ideally, you'll be flowing, so you won't just be holding on for dear life like we do.
No, exactly.
When we're scared, like when we're white belts at that tournament, we're like, I don't want to let the other guy do anything to me. Yeah. But I have no time to figure out what I'm going to do because I'm just trying to stop him.
Yeah. Exactly. But, and that's where you got to trust in your game. I mean, you trust in the guys you work out with. You trust in your instructors, who helped you out. And you just got to believe in yourself. And like I said, at that point, it's like I always tell everybody, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's just about going out there and testing yourself. Mm-hmm. Because even after you lose, let's say you lose a match, and I shouldn't, there's the same with girls, you either win or you learn.
Right.
And actually, if you don't get you lost on points in that match or whatever, but the confidence that comes along with that, it is so rewarding. It doesn't matter what. I remember when I first got promoted to black belt, and my first black belt match in a gi was against Mark Lehman. Here I am, I think I was 39. And this guy was world champ and competed a lot, 25, 26 years old, and to go in there, and like I said, I already competed at that point in time, and it took him 8 minutes to catch. He caught me. He caught me with a choke, but it took him 8 minutes to get me out of there. But after I got out of there, you wouldn't believe getting back on the mats, the confidence that I had, because I just gone 8 minutes with a guy half my age and a world champion at that, and so that's what I tell all my students, compete, get out there, because you might not get the medal or whatever, but that doesn't matter. But the confidence that will come back from that competition will be so. I told that to Checo this tournament. I said, you know what, it doesn't matter. You go on up there, you're going to represent, but trust me when I tell you this. I said, when you come back, you will see your game how elevated it is. And
Checo achieved a third place medal.
Yeah, he got a third place medal
at the Pan Am's, the biggest jiu-jitsu tournament in the world.
Yeah, it is the biggest tournament, and to get on the podium is very tough. And he went out there and competed, and this was his first big tournament. He competed at the state tournaments, but then he competed this time around, and so I can imagine, now it's like, okay, I've done this, come back over here, and I'm only gonna believe that his game is going to be elevated after he comes back.
And we also have yesterday we got a gold medal champion at the Pan Am's, right? Mike Romero.
Mike Romero, one of our brown belts. He did really good.
That's incredible.
Has Ed gone yet?
What's that?
Has Ed gone yet?
I think I was checking earlier, and his match wasn't up. I think he was up at 1:30 or something like that from the last time I checked the updates of the schedule. Yeah. So he has a very good chance. He had one the semifinals and then another match if he were to get there. So I haven't heard anything back, but
well, he's done it before. He's a world champion.
He's won at every division. So this is the first time competing at the black belt level and at the Pan Am's.
Right.
He's already got that world title.
Master Seniors Worlds.
The Worlds, and so it'd be kind of nice if he picks this one up. So
that'd be great.
Yeah.
I maybe about 8 months ago or a year ago, I didn't have a job, and I don't know. I got it under my skin that I wanted to try stand-up comedy. So I went out there to an open mic at a bar downtown, and I was like 15th guy on the list. So I didn't go on till like 1:30 a.m. and there were 4 people in the audience. I mean, just a dismal sight. But it's very nerve-wracking to go up and do comedy. Like, you have to have stuff prepared, and it's not going to go well your first time or your first 50 times. It's a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
And I was nervous. I was really nervous waiting to go up, but it wasn't that bad. And then I went up and I did it, and I bombed, and it was fine. But I attribute the fact that I didn't shit my pants to Jiu-Jitsu competition, because as hard as it was to stand up with a microphone and tell jokes that weren't funny, it wasn't as bad as putting my well-being and my body on the line against an opponent in a combat scenario. And I mean, I'm not a cage fighter, but a jiu-jitsu competition is really serious.
Expanding on that, do you feel like, because I feel like jiu-jitsu's made me better at every single thing I do. It's made me a better student at other things. It's made me a better husband. It's made me a better person. It's made me better at figuring out problems, because you've tested your limits and you've gone past them.
It has,
and you've lost, and you've been hurt, and you've had reasons to quit, and you've come back anyway.
It's not only competition; it's the fact that you've gone up through the belt ranks. And just a lot of people live their whole life without ever getting really good at something. And people don't think about this a lot, but the effect that has on your psyche to go from sucking at something to being really good and expert at it, even if it's learning another language or painting or fixing cars or whatever, being really good at something, it can only be done through years and years of repetition, and it teaches you something, like it hardwires a lesson into your soul.
Especially something that you pay for your mistakes in pain and pride.
Good point.
It's and there's a lot. You're faced with adversity every day in there, because when you're going through the line and you look up and Hector's next. You know this is 3. You know that time is not solid, because 3 minutes with Hector is a lot longer than 3 minutes with. And
any match with any size guy, because jiu-jitsu is unpredictable, man. As much as you can control your game, you don't know what the other guy's going to do. He might be a crazy white belt
by a guy who's not as good as you. You can still get caught.
You could just get injured. And I don't want to scare people off from trying. A lot of people are not going to do jiu-jitsu because they're afraid of getting hurt, which I don't really get. I just don't really. I don't know. I don't care about injury.
I always try to put my finger on what exactly is it, because, I mean, if you would see the boxes I have of signed waiver forms, I mean, for everybody that has tried that. I mean, if I would have kept half of those persons that signed waiver forms, I mean, I'd be.
So you're saying the guys who signed up and then never
came back, and I really, really have tried to put my finger on it as what it is, but it isn't. I don't think it's them. I just think jiu-jitsu is not for everybody, you know? Yeah.
Like, do you see guys when they come in, because you've seen so many, that where after a couple classes you can see like the qualities in guys that will keep them coming? Because there have been some guys we got down there even recently, and I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty tough. He's probably going to stick it out. And then I'm like, well, where is he?
Well, I've tried to. I know you're asking, Martin. I've tried to figure it out, and I can't find a pattern to it. I can't find a pattern to who stays and who goes.
I remember Danny. Remember Danilo? Yeah. I remember looking at him, and it's funny because I told that story, and it's like I saw him come in, and remember he used to wear those nerdy glasses and
Clark Kent.
And I said, this dude's not going to make it a week. And he turned out to be one of my best players.
A prodigy, yeah. I know, it's crazy. And then some guys, they're like, they got kind of an aggro vibe to them, which doesn't really work at a jiu-jitsu academy. But some of those guys actually do stick around, and you're like, this guy's not going to make it. It's all his ego is too into it.
Yeah, he's not going to like it.
And then maybe he does make it. So, like I said, I can't find any pattern.
I try to figure it out, and it's like I just have a hard time. Like I know it's an aggressive art, and it's you against that other person, and I know sometimes pride is hurt, and you can't stand the fact that you're losing to someone else, but I think you really, really just got to give into it and accept it. That it's like I tell everybody, you're gonna get beat, but the reward is amazing after if you make it through.
And so many young guys come in and they think, all right, I'm gonna do well on my first day, and then they get their ass kicked, but then they think,
I love those guys. I like to see their face.
But sometimes they transform and they're like, all right. I'll do this for like 6 months and I'll catch on and then I'll kick their ass.
Yeah.
It still doesn't happen, man. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what What did Romulus say? This isn't good for radio because you can't see what I'm doing, but he put his arm in the Americana position, a shoulder lock, and he was asking us after an open mat, and he goes, "Are there any weights I can lift to strengthen this muscle so that I can get out of that attack?" Wow. We're like, "No, dude, no." He was doing it anyway, though. He was like lifting barbell.
Technique is infinite, man. Practice your technique.
I never heard that one.
It'll never run out. Your technique will never run out. No. You'll get tired. Your strength will fail, but your technique will always.
Let's just forget the proper technique for it. Let's just
muscle out,
strengthen the arm.
It's like this belligerent attitude. Like I refuse to learn the skill, but I'm gonna get out of it somehow anyway.
Yeah.
One thing that I was putting this interview together, and I'm thinking a lot about you, and I of course, since you're my jiu-jitsu instructor, although I know your family and we've hung out a few times, but I see you as very much in a leadership position. So down at the academy, of course, that's the role you take. You're a leader. People look up to you and everything like that. First of all, that kind of personality trait is rare. It has to be by definition, because most people have to be following or joining a group. Everyone can't be a leader. So is this something that that's always come out in your life, or was it new with jiu-jitsu that you took that role?
Well, I really can't say. I don't know if I took it or if it just came along with it, because I've been doing jiu-jitsu as long as I've been doing police work.
Right.
And it's funny because, a lot of my supervisors used to ask me to promote to sergeant, because they used to tell me, you're a natural born leader and you'd be good at it. And so I don't know. I don't know if jiu-jitsu brought that out in me or what, but
you haven't pursued it in policing?
Well, I haven't promoted. I mean, I haven't tested as many times as I should have. But I've been a lead police officer for the longest time now, and basically I assist my supervisor. Or back then when I first started, it was different because an LPO was left in charge, where a sergeant would take the day off or whatever, and so you got the position of being the person in charge, and so I guess in doing that, I was thrown into it, and then being a jiu-jitsu instructor. I had to take the lead role as far as that.
Definitely. I mean, you started a school, and then people started joining, so it just you naturally became.
And before it was, because when I first saw Royce Gracie in '93, there wasn't any Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, it's funny.
There was nothing.
There was nothing.
Find a Taekwondo school anywhere you look.
When I first started training, there was only one black belt instructor in the whole state of Arizona. There was probably a couple of blues. I mean, when I got promoted to blue, I was probably one of 7 blue belts in the whole state, and that was it. And when I got promoted to purple, I was probably 1 in 14 purple belts, and that's how small it was. I mean, there was nobody or hardly anybody qualified to teach.
I know we probably have close to that many purple belts now.
Yeah, for sure.
Which puts you in a weird spot, because as John alluded to before, you have a team. For jiu-jitsu, it's an individual sport, but there's absolutely no way to get good at it by yourself.
That's a good point.
Or even with just a single partner, because you're going to learn each other's preferences. You got to roll with a lot of guys,
and guys that are better than you,
and guys that are you have to get your ass kicked to get good at this.
Yeah.
You have to.
It'd be nice to the best thing is probably roll 3 matches with with guys that are better than you, and 2 with guys that are not as good as you. And that way you'll get to try some new stuff on the lesser guys.
No, you have to mix it up. You can't roll with the same tough guys the whole time, because, like I said, you figure out your games and it becomes stagnant, And
you have a very intuitive way of matching people up during class. I mean, I think most people, once the classes got to 30, 40 people, if I was the instructor, I'd probably make it systematic in some way, so I didn't have to think about it. But you sit there and you're rolling too. And you call out, you say, you go with you, and that shows like a real intimate knowledge of the level of all of your students. Yeah. And you're saying, I want to see what this guy does with this guy, or I want this guy to learn from him.
And it's funny you say that, because that's the work going on and behind the scenes, you could say. There is a lot of stuff. I really, really pay attention to all my students. I'm not when I started this school, it wasn't, to make money or anything. It's never been about money with me. It's about trying to produce the best jiu-jitsu players, and the best persons will come out from there,
Yeah.
Like you said, jiu-jitsu changes you. So that has always been my goal. And when I match people up, let's say that, when I throw somebody a white belt with somebody a blue belt or purple, it's not so they can get trashed, unless you come in with an attitude.
Right.
Or unless it's Luis.
Yeah.
Like, then it's, it's happening,
Luis
man.
hasn't got the idea yet.
It's happening.
But, the idea is to see where they're at and see where their growth is, and then talk to them about it and see how they felt. And that gives them a good idea, because sometimes when you let people roll with the same persons all the time, and I'm talking about the lower ranks, then there's really, they get confident, but then all of a sudden when they get to roll with the blue belt or even a blue belt, they get to roll, with purple belt closer, but then they throw them with a brown or black.
And all of a sudden their thing that they thought was, they
figured
it
all out, and then you realize, like, holy mac, and that's where they find out what their problems are.
I think that's one of the biggest hurdles to retention of students, is that blue belt hurdle, where for the most part you've become kind of a big fish in a small pond over there on the white belt side, where you can handle your business.
Yeah.
And then you do okay against some of the blue belts, but then you get that promotion and you run the gauntlet, and now you're rolling with all the blue belts and the purple belts and the brown belts, and you're not getting those white belt rolls anymore.
No.
And it's like you've spent a couple years, because if you don't know, jiu-jitsu, you don't get promoted quickly. It's
years
generally
between
years
each
between
belt.
each belt. You're telling you, people are asking you for years, what belt are you? Like, I'm still a white belt, but I can kick your ass.
Yeah.
I mean, and
people don't realize,
so you got your first belt, and you've been doing it for how many years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they say.
You must suck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
2,
like, no,
3
no, no,
years,
no.
And actually, you're going to hold your own at blue belt with if you don't know how to grapple, you're going to handle business.
Blue belt's going to kick it, and that's the first belt you get in jiu-jitsu after white. And a blue belt will trash just a dude who is just flailing about, throwing haymakers and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
I think you said it best, Brian. It takes you longer to get your black belt than it does to go through college.
If you start law school today and I start jiu-jitsu today, you'll be practicing before I have a black belt.
A long time before.
And that's
law school is only 3 years. I mean, you could throw the whole bachelor's degree into that mix. Some of high school.
I mean, you get called professor. It's not easy to earn that title.
And that's what I want people to understand. We're talking about colored belts here, and a lot of tough guys or people out there, they kind of think, oh, what is this? Like kids playing karate and stuff. You got your colored belts. I've had friends, make comments like that before, and but
they won't come down there.
No, they won't come down there.
Sure won't.
But it's just like those days when you get those belt promotions. Those are some of the most important days of your life. I mean, the sense of pride and accomplishment is unbelievable.
I'll never forget any of them, man. They're on my calendar. You could give me 100 concussions. I'm never going to forget getting especially the purple belt or the brown belt.
You know what?
Such big deals.
Something that really surprised me when I started training was that a lot of police officers and military guys too, that they don't know anything about hand-to-hand self-defense.
Nothing.
Yeah, so you got a lot of cops out there.
You know what? It depends on a lot on the different departments and who they have teaching those courses. But for example, the military finally recognized that, and I'm sure they found out by getting one of the Gracie family members.
He was a Gracie associated guy that turned him on to the combative system.
and the combative systems, and I'm sure somebody in that group trained with them and says, you know what, you really got to learn this stuff, and that's how that got introduced. And I think that's part of. I know it's part of the core program for the Army as far as their combative system.
Yeah,
but that's the same thing with police departments. It's like it depends who they got helping teach and everything else. Definitely. There.
But I mean, even with that, it takes, let's say, 2 years of attending class 3 days a week to get your blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Let's just say on average.
Can we agree that like blue belt is considered like proficiency? Like you're not an expert, but you're proficient.
It's
in
the
jiu-jitsu.
First belt, but you're good. You know jiu-jitsu basically. You know a little bit from every position.
I call it an advanced belt. And because you're not a beginner anymore.
Right.
And because you already spent 2 to 3 years,
you know your
quite
stuff.
a lot of
Like, you can
information.
grapple.
But my point is, like, even with Army combatives or police self-defense training courses, are they ever going to even amount to that, to the 3 days a week for 2 years straight?
No,
they're
just-
never going to even amount.
they're
to
never
that.
going to get those
and
reps.
that's why you concentrate on just the simple, basic self-defense stuff. That, you would have to spend a lot of time, and departments or even the military don't have the money or the time to get somebody in trained.
Right, and that makes sense.
So it's up to the individual officer.
But imagine, well, you don't have to imagine, but Bryan and I imagine being out there in the capacity of a police officer, where you're encountering dangerous people that don't want to see you around. In other words, you're putting yourself in a dangerous position, and you don't know personal self-defense.
Right.
You don't know jiu-jitsu, and that's the majority of police and military guys too.
Well, and
How does that relate to the use of deadly force? In other words, this is a big question right now in big debate in culture, is this use of deadly force by police. How are you going to be more likely to use the gun if you don't trust your body?
No, you know what? I think it's pressed upon us enough as what we call, and I don't think a lot of people realize, it's a force continuum, what we call.
Okay.
And there's certain steps and certain levels that
Escalating levels of force.
Escalating levels of force,
Right.
exactly. That at each step, and it doesn't mean that you are gonna at each step,
Adhere to it.
Adhere to
Yeah,
it. You can go from verbal, which is the first one, which is me just talking to you.
Yeah.
And we can escalate. We could skip the 4 or 5 steps.
I would
and right
even
into deadly
contend
force.
Yeah, the guy
that-
could punch you in the face.
Yeah, I would even contend that before you go to verbal, like even your presence as a
Yeah,
police
and
officer
that
is
is
the
the-
first
that's
level
the first
of
one,
force.
the first
Because
level
as soon
of
as you
force,
walk
yes.
in, if I'm doing some dumb shit and you walk in your uniform,
Yeah.
I stop doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I mean, I feel self-conscious when Stucky walks in his gear, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
all right, we're not
RoboCop.
The refrigerator's closed. We're not doing anything
And
wrong.
with that being said, I think we're trained well enough to understand the force continuum. I mean, that's drilled from us from day one at the academy,
Right.
and then throughout advanced training and everything else that you go through, your updates and everything else. That what you can and what you can't do.
And that brings us to something that you said before we started recording, which was that no police officer wakes up in the morning thinking, I want to go out there and have a deadly force incident.
With everything going on right now, it's like I had never been approached, and maybe because I spent most of my career on midnights, but now that I'm on day shift, I see the public a lot more. And this, the whole incidents with with Ferguson and the other departments that that had some tragic events, and it was like, how could it go this way and all that, and my only response, John, to that could be, and it's like, there's no officer that wakes up that wants to kill someone or wants to shoot somebody at all. I mean, we're there, like I said, it's there. It's on our vehicles to serve and protect, and that's honestly what every officer wants to do out there. But there's some persons that are not going to adhere to the rules and just want to step it. And the only thing is, I have a family at home. I want to go back to my family, and I will protect my life. Like I said, it's something we face every day, but. I don't like the way we're being characterized now, and the fact that we're hungry to kill someone or hurt someone or anything like that, because that's far from.
I think anyone who characterizes it like that is
They're certainly not looking at the whole picture.
They're not looking at they're not taking a radical agnostic approach, where they're questioning their own beliefs. But I mean, it's a tough job. It's a stressful job.
It's the number one most assaulted profession in the world.
Well, that makes sense. But that kind of means that not everyone's made for it, right?
Yeah, you can say, there's some. I've seen some officers that new recruits that it just. I remember having a rookie training with me that, that he had a hard time handcuffing people, and he ended up leaving the program within a month after that. He's just like, this is just not
he
for
just
me.
like morally he didn't like doing it.
He just even
Getting up
even
close and
for
personal.
as bad as
So even
as
more
bad.
than a cil rights issue, it was like a human rights issue for him.
Yeah,
And he
it was
couldn't.
exactly.
Yeah.
And nicest guy in the world. He would have made an excellent officer, but he just. And the reason that was brought up, because I remember he, we had arrested somebody, and we were taking him back to the jail, the Pima County jail, and next thing you know, this guy's pounding on the back of my window, and I said, "Did you handcuff him?" He's like, "Well, yeah, but it wasn't very tight."
Oh my God!
And so next thing you know, we had to stop the vehicle and re-handcuff this guy, and so it happens. It's not like I said this, and so we had a big talk, and he was just one of those guys that wasn't made for that kind of position.
I have a question, actually, and going back to what he asked initially, as far as escalation of force as it applies to the hand-to-hand combative training, do you feel like personally that your jiu-jitsu training in situations where it might escalate to a hands-on arrest, do you feel like it makes you personally less likely to escalate your force because you can? Because I've seen some of these videos online, and I think I've even posted a couple, and I thought, the guys I know would have been able to control this guy without beating the shit out of him.
Right.
I know they could have, because they do it to me all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering for you, if you feel like that plays a role in you being comfortable to deal with people.
It certainly does. I mean, just the confidence that comes with it, being able to neutralize. You're going to find it hard to believe, but in my 20 years of being an officer, I've only had to punch one person that I've ever arrested. Everything else has been simple takedowns, simple control holds, and everything else.
Well, and just from working psych, I honestly would believe that, because the amount of takedowns I avoided by working through it with people was way more than the amount that I did.
And we're going to talk. Me and Bryan are going to talk at length about our experience in the psych hospitals where we worked, level 1 psych facility for several years, on a later episode.
Right.
But
I'm sure you have a lot of, like, how many of the people that you come in contact with have psych issues? I mean,
there has
to be a good amount.
But there also has to be some police also who are in it for the wrong reason, right? I mean, I'm not saying like horrible people, but once in a while, do you ever come across guys that they kind of,
or the guy that's burnt out, he can't hang on to the,
because
he personalizes it, he project,
there's some individuals that come into this job and and it's funny because it's customer service. That's what we're there for.
That's a good point.
And so we're there. We're supposed to help the public out, answers, and there's some, I mean, whatever it is, their temperaments or their views or anything like that come into play that they just can't adapt to dealing with that. And there's been issues with that, but problem officers will be found out quicker than quick, and they will be dealt with.
Right.
And in our department, I mean, our city is blessed to have a good department. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of good officers in here, and I don't think we've ever had any issues as far as what I'm seeing on the East Coast or anything like that.
Now, I heard that TPD, Tucson Police Department, ordered 60 body-mounted cameras to run a test run. How would you feel about wearing a body-mounted camera? Do you think that's a policy that would help policing? A lot of police think it'll help them as well as the public, because it'll provide evidence. So in other words, if an officer says he did this, he could have the video showing that he did. So it seems like there's an argument that across the board, body-mounted cameras are a good idea. But
I think they're a great idea. I mean, we know what our job is, and there's we're not the most politically correct as far as what comes out of our mouth sometimes, but that's easy to handle.
Yeah.
But I think it would be good for the officers, because there's plenty of times where you get accused of something.
Yeah, you can benefit from visual
you can
evidence.
benefit greatly from it. And so, me personally, myself, I don't have a problem with having a camera on me at all.
I never really did either when they started installing them in the hospital. They're like, oh, there's cameras all over the place. And I said, well, you know what they're going to see me doing? My job.
Yeah.
Like I'm always doing.
Right.
So I don't mind them being there. I feel like they protect me, because a lot of times there'll be a patient accusation or something where they say, he did this, but it's clearly on the camera.
It saved plenty of officers from accusations where
it saved me a couple times.
I think it's good all around, and it helps transparency, because what's going on right now is an us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. And I think the police are guilty of it too, but it happens a lot in the public. Myself as an example, when we go on Facebook and we watch a compilation of police brutality incidents, it makes us so mad, but it's a completely unrealistic portrayal.
It is, because you only get one little piece of it, and you go back and you find out what really happened. And then it's like, okay, well, and people, there's some that are still not going to believe, no matter what you throw at them, it's still going to be police brutality. But
and even the usefulness of body mounted cameras is limited, because I mean, like the Eric Garner case, that was videotaped. I mean, we all know what happened there, and it's still polarizing. I mean, some people still defend the police, and a lot of people blame them for handling that wrong. And I mean, it actually relates to jiu-jitsu a little bit, because the chokehold was a piece of shit. That was a shitty chokehold.
I had a guy tell me that he was a police officer, and that was a neck restraint. And I'm like, oh wow, I have a brown belt in Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and we call neck restraints chokes. I like the elbow was under the chin. Yeah, he was on the trach. You had it locked off. That's what we call a choke. I mean, I don't care what you're calling it.
And I think it's been. I think it's been the term as far as the choke, because carotid chokes. Carotid chokes are, I mean,
harmless.
They're harmless.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you hold them forever.
You hold it forever. You have to.
Yeah, you would.
But it's funny. But when I first came on the department, even now, if people don't know what it is, they look at it and say, "Well, you can't do that," and it's carotid restraint shouldn't be used. It's just
the most humane thing you could possibly use.
I think it's the best way to end a fight. I'd much rather be choked out than knocked out.
And that's what I'm saying. It just who presented that information to where the point where it became known that believe that like I said, a carotid restraint is dangerous. Like I said, we practice them all the time. That we know that you can feel when somebody goes.
Well, that guy
I don't think it was honestly the choke that they determined killed him. It was positional asphyxia. So it was the way.
I think it was other, and it usually
he had health problems.
Well, he had asthma, and he was a really heavy guy. And if you put a heavy guy face down, like they have problem breathing anyway.
Yeah. I
mean, they're not. It just makes just the weight on your lungs alone, and then put people on top of them. Like
I mean, it's just like
that was a big concern at the hospital, because we would get.
Well, he had the arm in too. He had the arm in instead of doing a rear naked choke, which might have put the guy unconscious, and they could have maybe sat him up or whatever. Yeah. They had the arm in, and the forearm of the officer was cutting off the trachea. So the guy was saying, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." But like you used the word tragedy, and that's what it is. I mean, it's a split-second thing, and I don't think that the charges against Eric Garner were severe enough to warrant a physical altercation. But I'm not a cop, and these things happen in moments, in milliseconds. Yeah. And normal people, like I said, who've never stepped on the mat or put themselves at risk, like being a police officer isn't even.
Go do a ride along. See what it's like out there.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not defending the police, and I'm not taking the other side, because that's what the show is all about. It's about finding a middle ground and just hearing different voices. It's not that everyone has to agree that the middle is the place to be, but it's you got to explore both sides rather than just ranting in one direction. Yeah. But I do think a lot of those incidents, they're tragedies, and. So this was my point. It's the us versus them mentality that's hurting everyone. It's making the public unfairly view policing, and it's making the police very defensive. So like the NYPD with turning their backs on Mayor de Blasio and this whole thing, that it's not the best state of affairs. Although then again, they're running into protesters every day, calling them horrible pigs and everything. Yeah. So it's this us versus them, and that's. Again, what this show is all about is tearing down that
us versus them mentality.
Those us versus them, and it applies to religion. It applies to so many things where human relationships get fucked up because you took this, you applied this ideology to your whole personality, and if anyone attacks the ideology, they're attacking you.
It's like an all or nothing approach,
right?
And that never works. Man. So it doesn't even matter what it is, all or nothing.
When I was working in the psych hospitals and as a bouncer, so I was like a copy of a copy of a copy of a cop. I was law enforcement with air quotes. And with much less training and everything,
and resources,
But I did experience, and I think everyone can agree, I'm a pretty nice guy. I don't ever start physical fights, anything like that. I'm no angel, but I'm not an aggro person. But on those jobs, especially on as a bouncer at nightclubs, I did fall into that us versus them mentality where I would, I'm not proud of everything, of the way I treated people. I never started anything with some innocent person, but once things got heated,
it can
or
escalate
if
more
like one
quickly.
time a girl hit me with her purse, like full swing, and that shit hurts.
Yeah.
And I tensed up, man, and I didn't want to grab her, but I grabbed her boyfriend, and I was like, I'm going to kick his ass if you do that again. You guys are out. Leave the bar. But a bunch of other times, that doesn't sound that bad. But anyway, things happened over the course of these years that I'm not always proud of. But it was an us versus them thing where I was like, fuck the customers,
Well, it makes it escalate.
Fuck the patients.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I'm on the side of the other psych techs, or I'm on the side of the other bouncers. And like, you do get into that mob mentality. So I'm wondering what your experience with that is, because you seem like kind of above that, like you've gone beyond that in a way.
It's funny you say that, but I don't know. I never looked at myself in that position. I mean, and I feel privileged to serve the community that I'm in.
Wow.
And I never really put myself where I was above them. And actually, I felt good in the fact, because if you knew my beginnings, I mean, my mom raising 6 of us, a lot of people don't realize my parents were divorced. And my mom raised us, 6 of us by herself, until we were grown-ups.
And made some really good salsa along the way.
Yeah.
I had dreams about that salsa.
Now, where was this? Were you born in Mexico?
I was born in Mexico, and my parents moved here when I was 5 years old. My dad was a carpenter, retired from the carpenters union, but I don't know exactly what happened, and I think my mom decided to move on,
Mm-hmm.
and so in that respect, I mean, there is I learned, even up to 5 years old, I learned a lot of things, and I learned a lot of things from my dad growing up as far as respect and everything else, and through my uncles. It's a totally different culture the way I see now, that I see that it's not being taught anymore, and but
to the culture at large, or police?
Just culture at large.
Yeah.
But then, looking back, I told several people, I had pretty much my 3 careers picked out, what I wanted to do. A veterinarian, which was number 1. Number 2, which is a cop. And number 3, which is a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness I didn't become a firefighter. That's from my firefighter friends.
Yeah.
But I went to U of A and studied veterinary medicine, pre-veterinary medicine, and my you have to pretty much have a 4.0, and my grades were A's, B's, and a couple of C's here. So at that point I knew that I wasn't going to get into vet school, and
super hard to get into.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, there's not that many colleges as it
Right.
is, and people trying to get in, and so at that point I said, well, I really didn't want to work in a laboratory, because that would be the next step as far as any degree I pursued after that.
Right.
So at that point I started looking at my second choice, and I wanted to become a cop. And like I said, that's growing up, but I had pretty much, like I said, what I wanted to do as a kid, and I followed that. And like I said, and when I got picked, actually I was living up in Phoenix, up there with Barbara, and I actually got hired over there by Mesa PD initially, but it was they didn't have all the money appropriate, so they couldn't give me a higher date as far as that. I had tested for TPD already, and
so you've had like a vision of what your life was
Yeah,
going to be for a while.
yeah,
And that applies to your personal life too, doesn't it? When did you meet Barbara?
Well, Barbara, I met her in junior high, and I've actually dated her since junior high. We actually,
It's amazing.
We've been together.
Yeah, it is.
We've been together. We broke up a couple of times, but we got back together our senior year, and we've been together ever since. So that's a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hear about high school sweethearts. You got that beat. This is
Yeah.
middle school.
Middle school.
sweethearts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah, but
maybe that has something to do.
Yeah,
with it.
but it's as far as John, I never thought of myself, and I was smiling when you were saying that, because I never thought of myself as them. I'm pretty much here to try to keep you safe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
and you're
it's
a
an
citizen
honor to put in a position, you know?
You're a citizen and a police officer,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
so
you know,
cops
but-
know what it's like not to be a cop.
Yeah.
But non-cops don't know what it's like to be a cop.
Right.
Right? Because no one's a cop from birth. So
Yeah.
we all...
No, exactly. But like I said, I never had that attitude. And even now, I mean, 20 years into the job, I still go out there and talk to people and try to help them out as much as I can. I realized through my whole career now that, you know, you can't, the majority of people you're not going to be able to save, and because you know you got your repeat customers or everything else. And, but if I can change somebody's life and all that, then it feels good. This past year, actually, you know, there was a younger officer came up to me like, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And I go, "No, I don't recall that name." He said, "Well, he said to thank you very much because you had a talk with his son, and his son got his act together, you know." So to hear that coming back, you know, that makes me feel good.
Isn't that kind of how K1 ended up at the gym? Like you were dealing with him out
in the
you know, community, and you just got him.
I can't believe K1 got on my show. His name.
Yeah.
That's I'm going to delete that part. Editing that out.
But just to elaborate on that point, like, weren't you dragging him out of being a dipshit at frat parties or something?
Well, he was hanging out with the wrong crowd, but you know, he's a good kid, and so we had a good talk, and yeah, it's
he became
incredible. He's a great guy, great jiu-jitsu player, but changed. I mean, he's going to school in San Diego now, you know, trying to become.
Yeah, I just talked to him this morning.
Yeah,
he wanted me to challenge Martin to a Meta Morris match. And
you versus Martin?
No, him.
K1?
Yeah. He's had a problem finding the gym when he gets into town lately. I don't know. Like
he's got lost.
His GPS breaks in the 520 area code.
Yeah.
You, though, all right, as a police officer, though, you really stand out for the reasons already mentioned and your whole viewpoint, but also because you took an actual and a highly publicized stand against a piece of legislation in Arizona known as SB 1070. I think that means state bill.
State bill. And so, risky, too. Like, that was risky, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's
so many... to your career, that could have been...
Well, you know...
That could have been devastating.
What was SB 1070?
Basically, there were certain, certain indicators, or I guess that you would be looking to into questioning that would give the officers the right to question individuals who they might believe were here
and detain, right?
And detain them,
and detain, right?
And detain them, and
so in other words, we're talking about racial profiling.
Well, that's what I would call it. I would call it racial profiling.
So it gave police a mandate to.
Well, you read the law, right?
Yeah,
you read. I read it too.
2-3 years.
Yeah.
What was
that? Was my take. Like,
you explain it then. So cops now had an obligation to
question people they suspected might be illegal
on their legal status.
On their legal status,
right?
So usually that falls to Border Patrol. Right?
Yeah,
that's not a city police thing.
Yeah, that's something that they handle, and that was just like trying to turn us into immigration officers, you know, and that's, I mean, we have enough to deal with, you know, that would be like asking the Border Patrol to deal with a domestic violence situation or a robbery,
right?
You know,
but it also must have a personal, you know, significance to you because you were born in Mexico, your family is born in Mexico.
Well, it's you know what, not so much that the fact that I was born in Mexico, but just the fact that there's a very huge Hispanic population in the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
And when you looked at these indicators that they pointed out,
there was a big gray area.
Well, there was not a gray area. It was pretty clear cut as far as who they were picking on.
But I mean, it gave a lot of gray area as far as to who could be detained.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing that it was. I mean, that's pretty much it. You know, I mean, I remember, you know, there was one of the statuses, or you know, said that you know, there was a certain amount of individuals in a car that they would give you reasonable suspicion. I mean, then I just tell you, I can remember growing up. Imagine this law going up in 1970s when my dad was driving us
kids in the back of the truck,
in the back of we had a station wagon.
Oh, nice.
But you know,
looking out the back window.
You know, that's ridiculous. Or you know, certain type of vehicles being junked up in front of the properties or anything like that.
Now, the conservative side of this, and I can imagine a few guys that we all know who I think would take this opinion, is that, well, look, if they're not here legally, they're breaking the law. So why shouldn't police take it upon themselves to try to identify people who are breaking the law in that manner and stop it. But are you saying that, well, look, the criteria for detaining people is inherently racist or racially motivated? So, I mean, there could be a guy from Sweden who isn't here legally.
Right.
And these criteria wouldn't help you to find that out.
Exactly.
Right. So you're saying it's picking on one group.
It was picking on the Mexican group.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's just. I mean, it was so clear cut, and that's what I saw it in, and then the persons that came up with this law. I mean, it's like they had come up with something like, I can't remember the state that they had come up with something similar, because they had the same problem with illegal immigration there, and so I knew what it was all about. And
I think I heard you once talk about it also being a constitutional issue, because and it really resonated with me when you were saying, like, just because a guy looks Mexican doesn't mean he's here illegally. There's, like you said, there's a huge Hispanic population in this area,
and that has immigrated and become citizens. And
now, it resonated with me though, because if I can, because we were going to go to the South Side to help a friend of mine move once, and I had a buddy from Sierra Vista up here, and I was wearing my work clothes. I had some khakis on and kind of a plaid flannel shirt, and he wanted me to change. He said, "Nah, man, I'm not going to be the only white dude on the South Side with you looking like that." And I thought, oh wow, so I look Mexican to my friend, so there is a danger with this law. If I look Mexican to a close friend of mine, who's to say I don't to an officer? And as an American, I remember you bringing up, like, you could be detained unconstitutionally because of your appearance, which is wrong.
That's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, because you're not breaking any laws.
Yeah. And
there's plenty of guys like that. So,
but you know what? It's funny. Here's another thing that I raised too, and I don't know, but. Any time that you're going to ask somebody incriminating questions, right? Miranda applies,
right?
And I don't think
to
that was
being to inform them. That
so
they don't
if
have
we're
to
trying
answer.
to find out that someone's here illegally, should we be applying Miranda before we're asking them here if they're here
due
illegally?
process?
Do you think though that the conservative side of this would say, well, does Miranda even apply to them, being that they're not legal citizens?
I'm not sure what the.
I think it does.
I think
it's anybody.
I think anyone
you're
in this
detain
country.
Anybody.
So and that honestly, like, legally, I don't understand that issue, but I'm just wondering if people would take that side, because I could hear people taking that side, like they don't get the same rights Americans get because they're not American.
But I don't remember that ever being part of any part of that law where, if you're going to start asking anything incriminating and asking someone to be, are you here illegally?
Right. Well, you're admitting to a crime if you're
exactly.
You can be taken to jail for it. So,
I mean,
I just
tell us though, what was the experience though of going against 90% of the police department and your superiors and what was the experience of that? What was it like? Was there pushback? Were you?
I really never really got any feedback back from. A lot. I mean, the only people I got feedback for the ones that were my friends or anything, and of course hearing from the ones that were against what I was doing, and it wasn't. I was representing the department, and to this date, I was representing the department. I'm representing myself,
right,
as a citizen,
and the department respected your.
And you know what? Yeah, it's funny because I went through the SB 1070 training one day, and the chief stayed behind and we had a little talk, and he was very supportive, and that made me feel good. And now that I talked to him, and he's actually came on a ride along with me sometime. And one time, it's like, I understand how he feels about the law. Yeah, I understand that he's the chief of police; he has to uphold state law,
right?
But he doesn't, he feels it's not a just law,
right?
And a lot of people, there's a lot of people, and I wish now that that. How everything has turned out, and pretty much the whole law is pretty much stricken down.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
And
do you think it was useful in creating discussion about the issue of immigration and how it should be dealt with? Do you think that such a controversial law and
it definitely did that,
and your opposition to it?
Somebody asked me that, and it was in an interview. It's like, oh, well, how do you think we should deal with the immigration problem? I said, well, you know what? It's if they're breaking the law, and I'm talking about breaking the law in a sense of
like acutely, like now breaking into a house,
like
or
breaking into a house,
mugging
robbery, or something
right.
like that. Those persons are automatically booked, automatically right there. That's where the check should be done.
In other words, we already have laws.
Well, that was already in place
against crimes.
Yeah,
so there's
and,
no reason to. It's like associating the immigrants with crime.
Exactly.
Is a superfluous because we already have laws against breaking into.
And even now, so much of the law has been stricken down, and I think just our general orders has changed, and you probably saw it in the news as far as what we can ask or we're not supposed to ask victims or anything like that. And we're back to where we were before the law was even in place, and there were already steps in place before that.
Right. But so this brings up our another topic that we could get into is this whole trend towards legalizing marijuana in a bunch of different states, and actually the next 5 states that have it on their docket, Arizona's one of them. Yeah, I think we have the lowest chance of it going through. We're talking about legalizing recreational marijuana, but this is an interesting issue for me because when you opposed SB 1070, it brings this question of the police, your job is to enforce the law. But what happens when there's a law that you don't feel is morally justified? Now, I don't know how you feel about marijuana, but I'm just saying that's another example of a law that some police might not think is a fair or at least the prohibition on that drug is more harmful than it is good. And I think there's indications showing that, and that the states that have legalized it,
crimes dropping, revenues up.
Yeah, there's debate on those. The revenue, definitely, it's huge tax revenue, no question about that. There aren't any deaths associated with marijuana ever because you can't overdose on it or anything like that. But some people say, well, now there's contact with cartels, but I think. Like in Colorado, enough people just grow that shit in their house.
They're not getting any cartel marijuana in Colorado.
And they wouldn't want to. I mean, they're heavily, regulated. So those places wouldn't want to be associated with, drug cartels. But anyway, I mean, I guess I should ask you, what's your opinion on that trend? And just in general on laws.
As far as what trend? As far as
the legalization recreational legalization.
To me, it's against the law. I don't see it legalizing and making it any easier. I think you're probably going to have more violence because you're going to have, it's several officers and I had talked about it, and you're going to have people competing for the distribution of it, and that's the way I view it. And then several others, not everybody might agree, but I think you're going to have more problems with it.
But are they? I don't think they're seeing that in Colorado and Washington.
I mean, they're opening stores basically, so you just have retail locations. Yeah. So there's competition, but it's kind of capitalist style.
But it's a difference. We're a border. Do
you think the geography is going to play a bigger role in it here?
Well, that's just like any other thing. Just like that. Just like SB 1070. I mean, why did it have to apply to us and no other states really came up with it?
So you think here the cartels maybe would make more of a play to get involved?
I think there probably would be a play.
Yeah.
I don't see why they wouldn't. There's money to be made.
Exactly.
And they want.
Although a lot of people think legalization across the board on a federal level would really
put a dent in the cartel.
It would hamstring the cartels because their whole business is built on a black market. So if this stuff is available for retail, no one's going to want to deal with the drug dealer anymore.
Right. You don't want to go down the street and maybe get robbed when you can go to Walgreens.
To the store. Yeah.
So, but the thing is from what I understand, and not that I paid so much attention to it, but isn't the prices of marijuana higher at stores than what you're paying now? So why?
It depends. My friend is in Colorado now, and he looked into it for PTSD because he wasn't doing well on the medications, and he's actually doing a lot better using the medicinal marijuana. He said it's a lot cheaper if you have a medicinal card, and then for recreational, it's kind of the same price as the street.
Well, there's a glut of supply now because it's such a booming business. So in Colorado, there's weed everywhere now, so the price has actually dropped.
Right. And when he said the recreational stuff, though, it's hard to get because the preference goes to the medicinal, and with a lot of people not wanting the effects of getting high from it. They want the pain-killing effects and the CBDs for the anti-seizure stuff. A lot of that is edibles.
And the cancer, and the beneficial properties for cancer as well. And
that you get from the edibles. So it takes a lot more to make the edibles. So he said recreationally, like there's not a lot as much going on as you would think.
Right.
That most of it's still going to the medicinal stuff. But he also contends that it's not that well regulated, that you can go to the different dispensaries and buy like 2 ounces a day per person. So you could hop through 25 different dispensaries in
why?
town.
Well, what's the purpose of that?
Well, you could take it to places, neighboring states where it's not illegal and sell it, or you could black market it to kids, because kids are still going to be trying to get it.
That's what I'm saying. That's where there's money to be made. And where there's money to be made, there's going to be loopholes, and someone's going to find a way of getting it
you
cheaper.
just remember in high school, like tapping guys on the shoulder and being like, "Hey, man, can you buy us a bottle of liquor? Like, we'll throw you a 5-spot, or we'll buy you a 6-pack, whatever." And I could see an argument against,
you must agree that the alcohol being legal,
way worse. I think alcohol.
There's no question that alcohol is a more harmful drug. But I mean, I think we'd all prefer that it's legal than a prohibition situation where a black market arises.
Plus, it's like $20 billion in tax revenue a year on alcohol.
Right.
So they're not going to get rid of that.
And cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think anybody's going to drop that business, coming across or wherever it's coming from. I mean, as far as liquor, it's very dangerous, but. It's a legit business. It's illegal, and you don't have many distilleries. I don't even know what's going on, because I know that they're allowing distilleries going on now, to micro distilleries.
Yeah, like small whiskey distilleries and stuff in Tucson.
That's I'd like to see where that ends.
Yeah, that was heavily regulated.
That's what I'm saying.
Somebody's got one. Yeah, somebody's got one here that I know
there's one downtown that just.
And they're making bourbon, right?
It's weird.
They were in a write-up recently in a local magazine.
There's like a renaissance with alcohol right now with these craft beers, and everyone's just getting into and then moonshine. Like people, that's getting more attention. Like people are, like you said, they're making their own.
There's a show about it on Discovery.
Yeah.
I used to get some great moonshine from those Arkansas hillbillies.
One of our students, he's opened up a business.
Francisco. That's some serious beer too. And he's doing it old school.
That's gonna be.
He's got like pulleys and big barrels.
Yeah. And he's a smart guy, but I think he might be getting in a little late on that whole craft beer thing. I mean,
his is
I'm
so
like just
fringe.
like I'm getting in late on the podcast thing, because there's 50 million fucking podcasts. That the chances of this one, but. Anyway, it's the quality of our guests and stuff that are gonna bring us up.
I think the nature of the discussion too, because we're not trying to polarize. You're not trying to polarize anything. It's kind of just looking at the issue to explore it, not to really judge it from that kind of what's becoming the traditional American perspective. It's either you're looking at it as a conservative, or you're looking at it as a liberal.
Team, jump on your football team and then hate the other guy.
Yeah. And you can't like and you alluded to it earlier. You can't separate yourself from this group that you've identified with, or this ideology that you've identified with, to just be like sit as a person and talk with another person. So if someone challenges
one of your talking points, you feel like it's a knife going into your body, and then you say, fuck that, and Thanksgiving dinner gets ruined.
Even if you're in 90% agreement, if you disagree in the slightest, like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were bringing up all these different things, and so I disagreed with one of the quote unquote facts that they presented, and suddenly I was on the polar opposite side of the argument when I said, well, actually, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just telling you that fact wasn't correct. Right. And like we have enough facts here to be upset about, where we don't have to make anything up. But still, like even that, I'm now you're against me.
Personally,
not really, but
I have a little bit of a libertarian streak in me. And on this marijuana thing, well, actually, drug prohibition in general, it's I know drugs are very dangerous, but I think the prohibition reduces knowledge and education in the public on what drugs do and what they're good for and what they're bad for. And then you've got these weird lines that are drawn, like prescription drugs are okay. That's okay to go get Vicodin, even though it's killing more people than any other drug right now. There's a horrible epidemic of those opiates. But my approach to this is kind of dogmatic. But so I'm welcoming my views to be changed. But what I resent the way that the government is regulating what you can do to your mind. So the mind-altering substances and stuff. There's just something, the principle of it. It's like, I don't need to be buying acid or something, but the principle of the government saying you can't change the way you think on your couch, on your home. Like, I understand, like, heroin
so it's like
and
personal
cocaine.
Censorship.
Yeah, and it really chaps my ass when I think that the government says, no, you can't change how you think with this substance. Other substances, yeah, like depressants, like alcohol, those are okay.
Right.
The ones that sit you on your ass and shut you up. But these other things, that medicinal plants that have been used by native peoples for thousands of years.
Well, and that's kind of a misnomer because most plants have medicinal properties.
Right.
Like most of your antibiotics come from plants.
I'm talking about psychoactive
Right,
substances.
okay, yeah.
But yeah, so that's just my little
Huge in
rant
Native
on
American
it.
culture.
Oh, yeah.
Massive.
And these ayahuasca trips and everything that people go down to Central America
What,
for.
you're talking about the DMT?
Yeah, it has
Yeah.
DMT in it. And these are, these are helping people.
Well, and they're
soldiers, veterans.
They're starting to look into hallucinogens and LSD to treat PTSD because like rewiring synapses and things.
And when you have a prohibition, you have less information, and there's a stigma. And instead of learning and finding out what's safe and what isn't,
Right. And
you
then
just have this kind of daddy says no.
And you get those skewed studies that are really trying to push one side or the other. Like they're like, no, it works on everything. And
Yeah.
the other side's like, no, it's
Yes.
going to kill you. It's
There's
gonna do
articles
this.
that come out.
I think
weed
we
cures your
just tend to be overregulated,
Yeah.
just with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Europe. I mean, they find a lot of cures and everything, and you can buy the medicine over there, but
Right.
it's not approved here.
Right.
So it's not going
Right. Or in Mexico or Canada.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
go down there
Yeah,
and get,
exactly.
but you can't get it here.
I
And
mean,
then you can get
it's-
arrested for going to Mexico to get the medicine that maybe will save you.
Yeah, even like
It's-
even steroids and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of for injuries.
Right.
That could become a very
oh, they've kept me on the mat some years.
Yeah.
Those injections.
Wow.
Otherwise, I
heal
couldn't.
up. I had a friend with a shoulder injury, and he got his hands on some HGH, and illegally, and he was shooting it into his shoulder, and it fixed. It just came back together. Like this shit is magic. But then he got, he liked the fact that he was jacked, so he
Yeah.
kept taking it. It's like $70 a day or something.
and that's where the worry comes
Exactly,
from.
yeah. But it's like the immigration thing. People are afraid that drug users will commit crimes to get more drugs. But crimes are already illegal.
Yeah.
So to add this layer that, we're going to make the drug illegal because some drug users commit crimes.
Yeah.
The crime is already illegal. You can already
Right.
throw them in jail. I mean, some libertarians are against the drunk driving law even because they say it's already illegal to crash into another car and kill a family. It's reckless endangerment. But I don't know if I agree with that because drunk driving is such
Let's not get that.
I
rid
know.
of that.
I'm bringing in that argument, but I don't think I agree with it. But anyway, so I think that's about it for today, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening. We're up to like 150 views on Facebook, on YouTube. So leave comments, click like if you liked it.
Yeah, share it
Share it on Facebook.
and think.
Make
for yourself.
suggestions. Make suggestions. Give me comments to say topics you want us to talk about, even though I have plenty in my head, and or guests in Tucson, that could come on, even though we have plenty. 29th Sunday, that's 2 Sundays. Greg Prill of De Brazil Jiu-Jitsu fame will be our guest, and we're going to be talking about psychic phenomena, crazy shit,
Collective consciousness. Oh,
Bryan's got a thing about the Native American tribes and the Great Spirit.
Yeah, just a theory of my own about the Great Spirit and the collective consciousness. And
Greg and I actually did an experiment, like a psychic experiment, for several weeks, trying to do this thing called remote viewing, and we'll tell you about the results of that experiment. And I don't know who the guest is next week. I'm trying to get a couple guys that I know here in Tucson, a tattoo artist, and maybe some other guys, but we haven't locked it down. So Greg's on the 29th. We'll have someone awesome next week. I need to plug my friend Bo is on Facebook, Bo Spartan. He started a show called New Music Sound Circus. This thing is really cool, guys. It's every week he takes 10 new songs from new bands and just throws them together in a little radio show. And it's really cool. Like when you're cleaning or just standing around, you hear new music and it's good stuff. It's hard to describe the genre. It's kind of just like rock or like independent something, but it's all good stuff. It's a lot of groovy, sort of relaxing music, and then some other things too. So check out New Music Sound Circus, and that's on the Radio Dogs Network on SoundCloud, where you'll also find this show. So this show is now going to be featured on Bo's page, Radio Dogs Network. Just type in Radical Agnostic, and you'll find it. Same with YouTube. That's it. I think that's it for today. Thank you to Bryan. Thank you so much, Martin, for coming.
You're welcome.
I think
Yeah.
that was
Having me.
awesome. And I think that was a great conversation. And your answers were enlightening and unique. And
Thanks.
yeah, can I make a plug?
yeah, go ahead.
The De Brazil Jiu-Jitsu Academy.
De
Change your
Brazil.
life, man. I can't tell you what it'll do for you on so many levels, and what what it's done for me.
If you're interested, hit one of us up on Facebook or on the YouTube page, somewhere where you can get a hold of us. We will help you come down. We'll give you the schedule. We'll tell you the rates and everything.
Because I found it funny how hard all of us found it today to explain it. It's so big. It's so big for you if it becomes your lifestyle that it's so hard to explain.
Especially females. Come down here. You guys will learn self-defense that works. You can change the way you feel walking around in public. I know a lot of women feel afraid around men all the time, and you should.
We're going to start Miranda with a women's program soon enough.
We're going to be starting a women's program. So, and you can train with the guys too.
And your kids, man. If you love your kids, don't put them in karate.
Yeah,
put them in jiu-jitsu.
If you love your kids, bring them down to the De Brazil with the Little Bulldogs team, and you will meet the nicest, most skilled and scary kids in terms of skill.
And if you can get your kids to stick with it, literally they will become great. Like in life, not just good fighters or good competitors, but they'll become great in life. It'll help you at everything. So De Brazil Jiu-Jitsu Academy, that's my plug. Come down and see us, train with us.
Guys, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next Sunday and every Sunday with new guests, new ideas, and tons of fun.
Fresh thinking.
Fresh thinking, yeah.
Be open, man. Talk about it.
All right, thanks. Goodbye.